أجمعين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وَهُوَ عُقْدَةٌ مِّن لِّسَانِي يَفْقَهُوا قَوْلِي. وَبَعْدُ. We give praise and we give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him because He's worthy of all praise, and we thank Him for all the numerous favors and bounties for which He has showered us, and we seek His mercy and His forgiveness and His guidance. For He whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, there is none who can mislead them. For those whom He leads astray or leads astray, there is none who can guide them, and we bear witness. And we testify that there is none worthy to be worshipped but Allah. He is alone, He has no partner, and we bear witness and we testify that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is a servant and His messenger, sent for the guidance of mankind. We give thanks to Allah for giving us another opportunity to come together, to gather in His home, in His house, to reflect on His word. We continue with Surah Yusuf, Surah 12, and we did up to Ayah 87 in our last session. So inshallah, we continue from Ayah 88 today, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. فلما دخلوا عليه قالوا يا أيها العزيز مسنا وأهلنا الضر وجئنا ببضاعة مزجاة فأوفي لنا الكيل وتصدق علينا إن الله يجزي المتصدقين. قال هل علمتم ما فعلتم بيوسف وأخيه إذ أنتم جاهلون. قالوا أئنك لأنت يوسف. قال أنا يوسف وهذا أخي قد من الله علينا إنه من يتقي ويصبر فإن الله لا يضيع أجر المحسنين. قالوا تالله لقد آثرك الله علينا وإن كنا لخاطئين. قال لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين. English translation reads, Then when they entered unto him, they said, O ruler of the land, a hard time has hit us and our family, and we have got but poor capital, so pay us full measure and be charitable to us. Truly Allah does reward the charitable. He said, Do you know what you did with Yusuf and his brother when you were ignorant? They said, Are you indeed Yusuf? He said, I am Yusuf, and this is my brother. Allah has indeed been gracious to us. Verily, he who fears Allah with obedience to Him and is patient, then surely Allah makes not the reward of the doers of good to be lost. They said, by Allah, indeed Allah has preferred you above us, and we certainly have been sinners. He said, no reproach to you on you this day. May Allah forgive you, and He is the most merciful of those who show mercy. So, Prophet Yaqub sends his sons back to Egypt for a third time. This is the third year running that he's sending them. First 2 years, this is the third year he's sending them back to Egypt. However, his direct instructions to them this time is that they should discreetly inquire about Yusuf. They should discreetly, hashasu means to discreetly inquire about Yusuf, ask about him in a discreet manner. Don't bring no undue attention to yourself, but try to find out about Yusuf. See that he knows that Benjamin is there in Egypt, and he knows that his eldest son Reuben is there in Egypt. And so he hopes that some news could be had of Yusuf there in Egypt also. And so he told them to check around and ask around and see if they can find anything about Yusuf. So when the brothers entered into the court of Yusuf, they were flattering in their address to him. Ya ayyuhal aziz. They're very flattering in their address to him. Ya ayyuhal aziz, O great minister. And so they inform him of the suffering, the difficulty, right? Because the great deprivation had taken hold of them because of the drought and the scarcity of stuff. And they have lost much of the animals and stuff like that. Things was really, really rough for them, right? Because the famine and drought was severe. It was extreme. It was really severe. And so it impacted them seriously because they didn't live in the city. They lived out more in the barrier, in the, in the countryside. And so they said, our situation is such. Adversity has afflicted us and our families. Adversity has afflicted us and our families. And they explained to him what is the situation. The merchandise that we bought for trade is meager. It's not what we bought like last time. What we bought, is much less, and its value is not as great as that. And so we have something with us, but it is not really what we know can cover the cost like what we did last time. So our situation is such. That is our situation. And so they appeal to his generosity and his kindness. They appeal to his generosity and his kindness. Right? جئنا ببنات مزجات فأوفي لنا الكيل. So still give us a full measure. Even though we have less, please give us a full measure. Give us just like you did last time. Give us a full measure. Even though we what a sadaqah maybe. And it will be a sadaqah. It will be charity to us. Be charitable. Be charitable and kind to us. Inna Allah yusuf because verily Allah rewards those who are charitable. So help us out. And so they're pleading with him for their help, for his help after explaining the situation is rough. Of course, this touched Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, because this is his family. Right? This is his family. This is his brothers. He's talking about his own, they're talking about his family, even though they don't know that who they're talking to. No, so it reached him, and some scholars say that he actually cried when he heard the situation. Right? Some scholars say that he actually cried. But it touched him. In any case, it touched him. And so he's touched by the situation, and he came to the realization, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed, it is time now to reveal yourself to them. As we know, the first 2 years that they came, he never revealed himself because Allah did not give him any authority to reveal himself. And the prophets, Ridwan alayhim, they do not do anything except when they were instructed by Allah to do so. Right? They do only what they're instructed to do. That is why when you follow the prophets, you're following, when you obey the prophets, you're obeying Allah. Right? That's why I say, Man yuti' Rasul, faqad ata Allah. Whoever obeys the prophet obeys Allah. Because the prophets do not act outside of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs them. Right? And we only know one prophet that did so, and you know what happened to him. Yunus alayhi salatu wasalam. Right? After preaching to his people, the people of Nineveh, they are Nineveh, as they say in the Christian scriptures, for a period of time, and the people keep rejecting him, he just got fed up with them and he left. Got fed up and left. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give him no order to do that. Allah just sent him to preach to the people. You preach. Just like Noah alayhi salatu wasalam sat down there for how many years? You do it until Allah tell you that it's time to leave or time to give up. But he was a little hasty and he got into trouble as a result of that. But not because he didn't, because he wanted to disobey Allah. He just was frustrated with his own people. Right? He was frustrated with his own people. So the prophets respond always. So Yusuf did not reveal himself in the previous 2 years, but now, as the situation has come to a head, that it was time for him to reveal who he was to them. However, he did it in a very unique way. He did it in a very unique way. Rather than just telling them who he was, he posed a question to them. He posed a question to them. He said, هل علمتم ما فعلتم بيوسف وأخيه إذ أنتم جاهلون? He says to them, do you know what you did to Yusuf and his brother when you were acting in ignorance? When you were ignorant. And so this approach is such a profound approach that the Prophet's message, Allah SWT always give them like some real solid arguments. So we are presenting matters. Prophets way of presenting things is always unique because it's from Allah. It is always from Allah, and Allah is unique. So everything comes from Allah is unique. So this is a unique approach. He asks them. From this, we can see that he makes them recall or bring to mind, right, the evil things that they did. By asking them this question, they have to go back. They have to go back. You know what you did to Yusuf and his brother? Now they have to go back. They have to recall. Right? They have to recall. So he put them in a state of recall. To reflect, to think. Right? About Yusuf. Because they don't forget Yusuf. Right? They don't forget about Yusuf already. That's what they done. Because, they really, even their father told me, you will continue mentioning Yusuf until you get, sick and die or something. He's gone, finished, stop, leave it all. That's what I was telling your father before they come. Pastor, you still go and ask. Because your father knew that Yusuf was not there. Right? He knew that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was not there. He knew that. Right? So he said he just didn't know where he was. So he had told him that God asked. And so he made them reflect, call to mind the things that they did so many decades ago. How many decades? Because Yusuf now is a big man and he's a ruler and all of that. and when they got rid of him, he was a young boy. Right? When they got rid of him, he was a young boy. So this is decades now after that he's asking these questions. You know, the jealousy of Yusuf and his brother, and the treatment of them both, and separating them, you know, tearing them apart from each other and from their father, and so on, you know, putting him in a well, selling him into slavery. They did so much stuff, right? They did so much stuff, you know, evil things, all evil stuff. They did all these evil things that they did, you know, and so he put them in a state of recall. Remember all this back, what you did. So here he put them in, so that they had to call to mind all this stuff. And that's what he says. You know, he said, "Wa antum jahilun." Right? Id antum jahilun. Jahil, you know, means the ignorant one. Right? The ignorant one. That's the jahil. Jahilun is plural of jahil. Singular. And in Raghib al-Asfahani, scholar Raghib al-Asfahani, you know, in his book Tafsir that he did for the Quran, all the kind of words and stuff like that, he goes through it and gives some explanation of them. And he says there are three kinds of jahl. There are three kinds of jahl, three kinds of ignorance. First, there is to be ignorant and without knowledge. To be ignorant without any knowledge. So you don't know anything. So you're just ignorant. Right? You're just ignorant, you don't know anything. Alright? So that's the first kind of ignorance. The second is to be unacquainted with or to be unaware of the reality. You just didn't know something. Right? You're not ignorant, like, you know, you're not, it's just you're not fully aware or acquainted with particular situation as it is. There's the second situation. The second and the third is to ignoring, to act upon the real knowledge. That is, you know, summary, to be foolish and ignorant because you don't know nothing, to be unaware, right, of something, or third, to refuse to act in accordance to what is known. To refusal to act in accordance with what is known. And you know, the last state, the last kind is what is meant, not the first two. The last type is what is meant by this, because this is referred to in Islamic language. It is referred to as jahiliyyah. This is referred to as jahiliyyah. And the Prophet ﷺ used the word jahiliyyah, ignorance, the days of ignorance. Right? So, because to ignore or disregard the truth is the worst state that a person can be in. To disregard, to ignore or disregard the truth or reject it. Right? To turn away, turn your back on it. Somebody tell it, and you turn your back. That is one of the worst states to be in. Because it is not that you are ignorant, right? Or you are unaware, you choose not to accept. You choose not to recognize. You choose not to follow.
That's Abu Jahl got his name.
Yes, that's Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl was the father of ignorance. Yes. Yeah, he was father of ignorance. And so this last state is a terrible state to be in. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah 8, Ayah 22. Right? Ayah 22, Allah says, Inna sharr dawabi indallah. Indeed, verily, the worst of all creatures. Dawab is the plural of dabba. And the dabba, kullu ma yadubu ala al-ard wa dabba. Everything that walks or crawls on the earth or moves on the earth is called dabba. Every living thing that moves on the earth is called a dabba. All right? So everything that moves on the earth, that lives and moves on the earth is called a dabba. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, of all the dawab, of all creatures, the worst of them, right? As-summul bukmul ladina la ya'qilun, is the one, is those who are deaf and dumb and do not, I cannot reason or understand. They cannot reason or understand. They refuse to reason, so they have no understanding. They do not. And this is here, this particular ayah is not talking about Allah deaf and dumb. He's not talking about one that is. He's not talking about one that is hearing impaired. Right? He's not talking about the one that is hearing impaired, or the one that has the inability to speak. He's not talking about those, because there are conditions, right, and they have more sense, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, like when Allah mentioned the blind, deaf, dumb, and blind. He's not talking about it. He's not talking ones who suffer from these situations. He's talking about the one, and he's mentioned another. He mentioned, that from among the people there are those who they have eyes, ayun, la yubsiruna biha. They have eyes, but they don't see. They have eyes, but they don't see. وَآذَانٌ لَا يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. And they have ears, but they can't hear. So they and وَقُلُوبٌ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا. And they have hearts, but they cannot think. They cannot reason. All right? So he's not talking to one who's impaired in any way. He's talking about those whose the natural hearing is good, and the natural sight is good, and everything is physically okay with them. But these ones, they choose not to see. They choose not to see. Like one of the British philosophers, I don't know if it was Bertrand Russell or which one of them, said, God, I see you everywhere, but I don't believe in you. It is, it's not, this is reality. It says that when to show these things, people will close their eyes because they don't want to see it. They will close their eyes because they don't want to see. I don't see anything. So a person see and they don't see. They hear and they don't hear. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't see nothing. Huh? People do that. It's not that because the eyes weren't working. It has nothing to do with the earth not working. They choose not to acknowledge. They choose not to acknowledge. And that is an unfortunate situation when it comes to the truth. That's a very unfortunate situation when it comes to the truth, when it comes to reality. Right? When it comes to reality, yes, may Allah protect us. Allah says this is the worst state to be in because that person lowers themselves even below the level of the average creature, the average animal, any other creature, a bee or a fly. Yeah? Or a cat, or chicken. They're worse because these animals function according to how Allah made them to function. They're serving their purpose. But here is this man that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created him and made him the best of his creatures and elevate him and honor him over all the other creation, and yet still he functions worse than them. He does not acknowledge his position, he does not acknowledge his role, he does not believe in his Lord, he does not, he doesn't. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned is the worst of all persons. And this is why Allah says in ayah 23 of that same surah, Surah 8, Surah 8 I think is Anfal, right? Anfal, yes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the other ayah in 23 he says, وَلَوْ عَلِمَ اللَّهُ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا لَأَسْمَعَهُمْ. And Allah knew there was good in them, He would have made them. He would have caused them to hear. Right? And this is not the hearing from the deaf, it is the hearing of response. The hearing of response. Right? The hearing of, had Allah known there was good in them, He would make them hear. The hearing of response. Right? And He says, وَلَوْ أَسْمَعُهُمْ. Allah said, but even if we make them hear as they are, even if we make them hear, لَتَوَلَّوْا. They would still turn away. They would still turn away, averse to the truth. So it doesn't make them, That's why Allah says, of such, سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتُهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. It doesn't matter whether you warn them or you don't warn them, they're not going to. That's how they are. That's who they are. Right? That's who they are. And Allah emphasizes, and yet you can find like ayah 55 of the same surah, Surah Anfal, Surah 8, ayah 55, or again also repeats that, emphasize this point. Or even Surah 3, ayah 120. And throughout the Quran, Allah subhanahu many places, Allah mentioned this reality. That people, Allah subhanahu gives us hearing and sight. And He mentioned this as the ni'am. He mentioned this as bhaktis and blessings and favors, special favors of man. He gave us the senses, hearing, sight, the ability to think, and all these things He gave us. So that the individual not only become aware of his environment, but can understand and comprehend what is going on so that they can make logical and pragmatic decisions to function in a proper manner. But when you give them all this information, and this is where you find out, that's why I said, not every PhD means anything. You see a person, he got a PhD. That means that he should be on a certain level of intellectual brilliance. And he looks around and he sees this kaleidoscope of wonder in creation, and he says, there's no God. There's no creator. It happened all by itself. Now that is not the statement of an intelligent person. Because if that is the level that your PhD takes you at, it's unfortunate. I actually had to say that to a person one time. I said, with all due respect to your PhD, I'm disappointed. So this was the state of Yusuf's brothers. This was the state of Yusuf's brothers. And so when he posed this question to them, they immediately realized after going. I mean, they got into themselves and they understood. The realization hit them that no one, right? That no one could have had that much knowledge about them and their situation if this person was not useful. Did Aziz? How he know? How he know about our situation? We didn't tell him. How will he know about what's going on with Yusuf and all that stuff? This decades of old stuff. How will he know about that? How will he know about our situation like that? So he must be. If he ain't Yusuf, he must know something about Yusuf. Right? He must have intimate knowledge. He must be Yusuf. And this is where, because he has a specific and pertinent question. هل علمتم ألسن يوسف وأخيه إذ أنتم جاهلون? A specific question. So that piercing question that took them right into that, it brings that realization to them. But however, they're less skeptical because this is the Aziz of Egypt. Right? So, with a little degree of skepticism, they said, قالوا لأنك لأنت يوسف. He says, are you really Yusuf? I mean, with a sense of disbelief. They say, I can't believe you, Yusuf. Right? I can't believe it. So as a sense of shock, are you really Yusuf? They said. And he replied in a very affirmative manner, yes, I am Yusuf, and this is my brother Benjamin. I'm Yusuf, and this is my brother. Right? So here he answers in a very affirmative manner because he can hear still that disbelief. They can't believe that he could be him. So you can hear that in their voice, in the way how they pose their question. Is it possible that you could be Yusuf? Is it possible? So he hears that, so he answers in a very affirmative manner. Yes, it is me, Yusuf, the same one that you did all that stuff to. The same one you did all that stuff to. And this is my little brother Benjamin with me here. So, right away, they come to understand who he is. Right? And so, now he lay on them and he leaves them at this point, he begins to teach them. He begins to teach them. And so, he explains to them and teaches them while they're in this state of shock. In this state of shock that they're in, he starts to teach them. He says, قَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. قَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Allah has indeed been very good to us. Allah has indeed been very good to us. He saved and protected me when you did that stuff to me. And he elevated me in status, to which you see me right now. And he reunited me with my brother. He's been good to us. It's just sometimes, when we should do like Yusuf and acknowledge Allah's blessings and fairness. Allah is really good it's a real a good thing. It's important when we can make that statement. Allah has really been good to me.
That's right.
Yeah. Because people today, they don't really come to that knowledge. Most people, they complain about everything. They got a lot, but they're so busy complaining that they don't have time to recognize and give thanks for what they got. But it's good sometimes to stop and say, Allah's been really good to me. Allah's really been good to me because He has been good to us. And so He explains to them, He then teaches them some fundamental principles of reality, of life, of success. And he goes on, he says, إِنَّهُ مَنْ يَتَّقِ وَيَصْبِرْ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Fundamental principle. He's teaching them so that they understand you were messing up. You mess up big time. Allah bring me out because of the fundamental principles. When you right? If you if you fear Allah, both openly and secretly, when you fear Allah, and you are submissive and obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you persevere with patience, you are patient, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're not depressed and complaining, despite whatever comes your way, then Allah will always will do right by you. Allah will do right by you. When you are patient and you patiently persevere and fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will do right by you. Allah will make a way. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. In Surah Talaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, it's good to read these things. Surah Talaq says, وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever fears Allah, Allah will always make a way. Allah will always make a way for them, a way out of difficulty, a way out of problems. Allah will always make a way for you. وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And He will provide for them from sources where they least expect or they cannot even imagine. And He will make, and one of the ayahs He said, يَجْعَلْ مِنْ أَمْرِ يُسْرًا. Allah will make the affairs easy for them. Allah will make the affairs easy for them. Right? And another one He mentioned, He would remove from them the expiate their sins. وَيَعْذِبْ لَهُ أَجْرًا. And He will give them a great reward. All this comes from taqwa, from fearing Allah and being patient. Fearing Allah and being patient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always bring all this good to you from taqwa. Man yattaqi, whoever fears Allah sincerely and is obedient to Him, وَيَصْبِرْ, and is patient. Right? And is patient. These are the key elements of success. The key elements of success. And so we need to practice this. That's why Allah says, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. Seek help from Allah through patience and prayer. But then He says, وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. But it is very hard, very difficult to do so, except for those who are humbly submissive to Allah. الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو رَبِّهِمْ. Those who are convinced of their meeting with their Lord. وَأَنَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ يُرْجَعُونَ. And that they can return. So Iman billah and in the Akhirah, the hereafter. So these are the fundamental things, the fundamental elements of success. The fundamental elements of success. If we want to be successful, we have to practice them. Yusuf alayhi salatu salam was a mirror of success. Look where he reached. How did he get there? Patience. Patience, God-fearingness, and patience. He was God-fearing and patient. So the wife of the Aziz couldn't catch him because he was God-fearing. He was patient despite all the lies and everything. Even remember, the brothers came in, they took Benjamin. And they said, they said that Benjamin was stolen the cup. They says, if we steal and get a brother before he did that too, because he was a thief too. And they lied to, they slander Yusuf to his own face. And Yusuf was patient. Yusuf didn't even flinch so that they would suspect that he was Yusuf. He was patient right through. So patience, is God-fearingness and patience are two qualities that we as believers in Almighty God Allah need to inculcate. We need to inculcate these two qualities as Yusuf is teaching to the brothers here. If you want to be successful, you got to inculcate these two qualities. Taqwa and sabr. Taqwa and sabr. These are the two qualities that he emphasizes. And he says, "Inna Allah ajul muhsinin." Allah does not cause the deeds of the good deeds of the doers of good, the reward of doers of good. Al-Muhsin are those who excel in doing good. The Muhsin are the ones who excel in doing good. قالوا تالله لقد آثرك الله عليه. قالوا تالله, they swear by Allah. Here now, once the reality, they come to grips with reality that the Aziz is actually Yusuf. Right? The Aziz who they've been, looking up to and, stuff like that all along. No, he is Yusuf. He is Yusuf. And this reality hit him and it says, Wallahi, Allah. Wallahi, Wallahi. Laqad athaka Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has surely chosen and preferred you above us. Allah has surely chosen and preferred you over us. وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. And so, with this, they now submit. They have to submit. Because the reality is on them. It's right there before them. So faced with this reality of what they did, because he don't make them remember it. Right? He make them he make them remember. So once they're faced now with the reality of it, right? And now the statue of Yusuf towering over them. What they did, what every sinner should do, they confess. What every sinner should do is confess. And so they confess. and they asked Yusuf to forgive them. Allah surely chose to love us. And we really messed up. We really messed up. We messed up. We don't know. We're sorry, man. We're sorry. We really messed up. What can they do? They throw themselves at the mercy of Yusuf. They throw themselves at the mercy of Yusuf. We messed up. We messed up. We messed up. And they throw themselves at the mercy of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Just like the Quraysh did when the Prophet ﷺ conquered Mecca. And he rode to Mecca and he by the Kaaba and he addressed them. He said, "What shall I do with you?" What should do with you? You fought me, you beat me up, you cursed me, you condemned me, you tried to assassinate me, you tried everything. What shall I do to you? What shall I do to you? And it says, you are noble. Son of a noble brother. Lord, man, we are at your mercy. We are at your mercy. And so Yusuf alayhi salam, given this situation now, they submit. Right? And they're begging for his mercy and forgiveness. Said, لا تثريب عليكم اليوم. لا تثريب عليكم اليوم. No reproach on you this day. There shall be no reproach on you this day. I'm not going to take you to task. I'm not going to take you to task. I'm not going to take you to task. Yaghfirullah lakum. May Allah forgive you. May Allah forgive you. This is a statue of the Prophet. Prophet Muhammad he says to the Quraysh, I say to you, as Yusuf said to his brothers. And the Prophet used the same statement. That is a degree of magnanimity, that you have to be on a certain level to display it. You have to be on a certain level to display that level, that degree of magnanimity. Despite all that they did, he's not mad. He's not mad. He's not seeking revenge. Now you this and now you're not no. It is deep, that's a really deep situation to be in. We ask, can I do that? Not to hold anything, any rancor in your heart. And to be genuine. Because he's not saying it with his tongue. He's saying it from his heart. And he's embracing his brothers. The same one that put him away. The same one that sold into slavery. The same one that gave him a hard time. The same one that did all this stuff. The same one that lied and slandered him. The same one that did to his brother what they did to him. The same one that put their father to trial. And he's embracing that. You're not taking him to task. Today you are free. Antum tulaka, the Prophet said. Yeah, you're free to go. That was what Muhammad tell the Quraysh, Antum tulaka. You're free to go. I'm not gonna do it. And so this is a real high degree that we should reach right? And he says, you know, and he made dua for them. Yaghfirullah lakum. May Allah forgive you. May Allah forgive you. In other words, I have forgiven you. I have forgiven you. For all that you did, I have forgiven you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive you for your evil. I mean, it's something that we, as you know, we need to be able to do that, forgive one another. You know, sometimes we do stuff to each other, and it takes a really big heart to forgive. It takes a really big heart to forgive. And forgiveness, I mean, is why forgiveness is such. Forgiveness it not only expands your heart, but forgiveness releases you. It releases you from recrimination and from anger and from spite and from seeking revenge and from all these things that consumes people. But these things consume. You know, when you go like that, they consume all these things. So the individual is, I mean, it's easy when you do that, he's able to embrace his brothers. Why? Because he forgave them. If you don't forgive, it's hard to embrace. It's hard to embrace when you don't forgive them. And so he forgave them and he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. And then he asks Allah to forgive them. He made dua for them. It says, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. And he closed at that point. Allah is the most merciful. And if Allah is merciful to me, I can be merciful to you. Allah is merciful, who is merciful to me. I'll be merciful to you. I mean, we need sometimes to remember that. Where Allah's been good to us. Be merciful to us. We should be. You know, don't be so harsh on other people. Don't be so hard on other people. Because Allah's been merciful to us. And we shouldn't be so hard on other people. We should learn. I mean, there's some very fantastic lessons to learn from the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Allah says, Ahsan al-Qasas. It's the best relational story. Because and he gives it in whole because of the lessons that you learn. The lessons that you learn. So much. If we can just take some of these and apply them in our lives, we can make it so much better. We can become, you know, beautiful like Yusuf. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us. Amen. Forgive us. Inshallah, I think our time is up. Inshallah, if there's any quick questions before we wrap up. I don't want to start the other section because that's going to run us over.
Yeah, Abdul Sabur is sending his salam to you, inshallah.